everybody. Welcome to another episode of Automation Ladies. It's just me, Nikki, today, and we have a guest from MaintainX, Brit Bartolini. Did I get that right?
You sure did, actually, for a first shot. Most people don't, so thank you so much for that. Hi.
Yay, cool. Is
Yeah.
Brit short for something, or is that your actual name?
It's short for Brittany, but pop culture ruined that for me, so I go by Brit.
I
Yeah.
like that a lot. I
Mm-hmm.
like that a lot. My name is not actually Nikki or Nicole, but people assume oftentimes that Nikki is short for Nicole. So yeah, it's just funny. I grew up somewhere where we only have like a set roster of names, and there's a certain way you have to spell them.
Yeah.
So here in America, I always, even though if it's a short name like Amy or something, it's like you can't assume anything, like that you
No.
know anything.
No, but everyone at work and at home knows if you call me Brittany, I better be in trouble. And even
Oh,
if I
okay.
call myself Brittany, they're like, "Why did you just say your name like that?" And I was like, "Oh, I don't know." So I get it.
Well, in typical automation ladies fashion, I love that we have actually not had a chat before this episode. I prefer to get to know people on the show if I get a chance. So thank you so much for
Yeah.
being a good sport for that, Britt. Can you do a little intro of yourself, or I guess I'll just go forth with our first question, and you handle it however you'd like. Which
Yeah.
is, can you tell us and our audience a bit about yourself and how you got to be doing what you're doing now?
Yeah, thank you. And first, I want to say I'm just so excited to be here. I am a fangirl of the podcast and of all three of you, so very honored to be invited. But I have a unique background that brought me to MaintainX. In my professional career, I went to school for animal science, was going to be a zoologist, so big science nerd. And then learned about zoos and decided to make a different life path. So I decided to work with kids instead, similar but
Okay.
different.
Yeah.
And my first job was tech education for kids. So we ran summer programs from 2010 on that taught kids how to do things like app development, game design, filmmaking, photography, things that they weren't learning in traditional school systems. So our camps actually were some of the first to have 3D printing, VR game design, and I saw VR
Oh.
kind of shifting to being used in the workplace. I myself became a maker and joined tech space and became CNC certified and a woodworker and really developed a passion for going bigger than what the books taught me in school, right? I was kind of pushed down a very traditional path
Yeah.
and then got really into getting kids into tech. And that became a passion, which led to my next career, which sold technology for retention and engagement of employees. And a big factor that we tried to tackle was multi generational engagement and retention.
Okay.
And really became passionate talking to the C suite about you're saying there's a problem here. You can't get people to stay or you can't attract the next generation, but let's look inward and what are the factors at play. And then whenever I went to switch from that career, I looked at very traditional techie kind of sales roles. But my family background, I come from a very small town. It's all manufacturing in my small town. I got chastised whenever I left, and it was like, you're too good for this town. It was like, you either go to the military or you go work in the factory in our town,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
And my father's whole family, to this day, they own a metal heat treating plant. And then my
Okay.
stepfather is a head of maintenance at a big manufacturing. He's going to retire from the same job he had out of high school, my grandparents. So manufacturing's in my blood. I've only ever seen, hands that have worked at the dinner table. And so when I found MaintainX, I thought it was really interesting. I thought it was diving into something that I was really passionate about, and that's giving technology to the people doing the work. But I sat down with my stepfather, who's my dad for all extensive purposes, and I was like, hey, I found this really cool technology and it's for maintenance people like you. And immediately, he's 3 years away from retirement. He goes, ugh, that's
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
that's for corporate. They care about fancy dashboards. They don't know anything about turning wrenches. And then his next line was, let me tell you something. AI is never going to replace the people who turn the wrenches. And I said, oh, that's interesting. And that's probably job security for me, but also as a woman who cares about getting into the tech space, getting into the maker space and inspiring children to get into these spaces, I said, oh, that's the challenge I want to take on. It's not whether or not I want to sell something. It's can I transfer this enthusiasm of all the things I've learned in my career and apply it to manufacturing and inspire kids in my hometown to go work under my grumpy old dad. So that's what got me to MaintainX, and I love it. I love it so much.
Wow, that's a really cool story, and I love people that are kind of like that, like multifaceted, and it mirrors my own, I guess, career journey a little bit, just in terms of like kind of going where the passion takes you, but like relating one thing to another, right? Because there's
Yeah.
so many transferable skills that can move from one industry to another, and there's so much knowledge that you can gain and take from, one position to another. Even if you're in sales, I think sometimes people think about, oh, you're just selling something, so all you have is sales skills.
Yeah.
And yes, there are sales skills, but to me anyway, being a salesperson is not about having the skills to sell somebody something. It's about having the enthusiasm for the thing that you're selling and
Yeah.
knowing what problems it solves and knowing how it fits in for the customer, and then being able to transfer that enthusiasm. And along the way, hopefully knowing the frameworks and things that help you, successfully close a sale, or make sure that, those things are in place. But
Right.
ultimately, um, my enthusiasm for the products or solutions I sell has always been what's driven me,
Yeah.
not the money. And I think there's different types of salespeople, and there's some that are really like motivated by the big bonuses,
Yeah.
and then, and not to say you can't be both, but for me, it's always been like, what cool thing can this solve, and what does me bringing it to people do? So it sounds like that's kind of more the camp that you're in from a sales side, right?
Yeah, and I should clarify, the first 10 years of my career, I was actually in operations. I was head
Oh,
of
okay.
operations for the tech education program. So it
Yeah.
was my job to design the LMSs and work with larger teams than myself to pull together the resources, hire, train. I would do a lot of the screening of the technical professionals we were bringing in and making sure everyone was bought into the vision of what we were doing. And I had a mentor in that job that really took me aside and was like, I think you need to get into sales. Like when you get passionate about something, the whole team is like, we're doing that.
Yeah.
And he's like, sales is really just you transferring that. And I was like, absolutely not. I snubbed my nose at it. No, I'm not a car salesman. And that's
Yeah.
that's the vision I had, especially because I didn't see a lot of women in sales, to be fair. And then I found the really cool company I went to work for later, and they actually went to college with me, and they said, I have this really cool idea, but it's about engagement. And I said, well, that's a problem that people want to solve, but I want to stay in the people space. So do you have that role? And they said, no, we only have sales, but we can teach you sales, and then you teach culture, and then we'll get there together. And then 5 years later, I was like, I'm never getting back into the ops. I love sales because sales is the transfer of enthusiasm. And it's true across the board. And this is really where I spend a lot of time with my clients now is it's not your job to sell software. It's not your job to go in and be like, buy MaintainX, right? Because that's the world I live in. It's your job to transfer why you care about this. You're obviously passionate about this pain you're seeing your people having. You're passionate about getting, your factory floor up to industry standards of this digital transformation age, but they're not seeing the vision. How do we help you transfer your enthusiasm, your passion for helping the people higher up in the org? And that's where I get lit up every day. I love coming to work and being like, let's get our boots on the ground. Let's see your floor. Let's paint a picture. I'll put it on a slide and you take it to senior leadership, right? So yeah, I didn't have a traditional path into sales either.
Yeah, so what is, I guess, make sure I don't get this wrong, but what is your current position, if I'm remember correctly, like account executive or something of that nature?
Yeah, an enterprise account director executive. We really just own a small book of business, normally to Fortune 500, Fortune 50 manufacturing, and sell across all of their factories, distribution centers, learning about whatever their culture is, usually learning about their financial earning reports and how we impact their margin. So that's a lot of what I do. It's actually funny. I was having a conversation with our SVP the other night, and we're like, how did you get into sales? And I love studying companies. I'm a nerd at heart. I'm always reading, always learning, always doing something. And you start studying these companies and you just get so excited about it. You're like, I want to go work for them. But you get to have that like honeymoon phase with these companies like 20 times a year. You're like, what? Like, you make corn? Show me everything about making corn. And I think that's also where the opportunity is, I go home to my cousins who don't want to go work at the factory anymore. And I'm like, no, sit down. I just toured a factory where they make like racing engines. That robotics class you're taking, you could be in here. Is this cool? And they're like, yeah, why didn't you tell me you could work on racing engines? I'm like, everything is cool in manufacturing. So, yeah.
Especially the first time you see it, especially when you get to learn about the process.
Yeah. Yeah.
And maybe somebody that's been there for, 20 years doing the same part of the process every day, they don't see that shiny, like you said, honeymoon phase. That's really cool.
Yeah. Yeah, but I will say, like, my dad giving me a tour of the factory, of course I've been there for Christmas parties and everything, but they make glass. They make wine bottles,
Okay.
right? So we've had wine bottles in our house and everything. But when he got to give the tour and explain the machines and he lit up a little bit as well. And I think some of the best companies in the recruitment programs do these tours and having the kids walk the floor, but also giving that mechanic who's worked there for 50 years explain how they fabricated that part for that 100-year-old machine and how they took it apart does light them up too. Giving that transfer of knowledge lights them up a little bit. So there's an opportunity there.
Yeah, that's huge. I want to circle back. I'm trying to do a better job at this on the show, but you mentioned LMS, and I just wanted to find that. I probably somewhat recently didn't know what that meant, but it's Learning Management System.
Yeah.
So hopefully we have a live demo coming up somewhat soon with a company called DeepHow. But I talked to them over at Automate a couple of weeks ago, and they also threw that out there. They're like, "Oh, normally this just sits in the LMS," and I'm like, "What?" Okay, so that's on the learning and development, like professional side of things at big companies. I've also worked for a lot of small companies, and they don't have LMS systems. Like it's just maybe they have a SharePoint. Like,
yeah, like it's bigger in the big companies. The training modules. I even was talking to Zach at the Prove It conference that he's part of the Intel group and industry.
Yeah, Zach Scriven, friend of the show. Shout out to Zach.
I love him. And we were talking about. I did their training. I did their mastermind. Okay. And we were talking about different LMSs that he could utilize and getting kids to like touch what they're doing too and all of that. So there's a lot of tools out there for it, but you could probably build it yourself.
Yeah, those are one of those things the way you may want to just buy it instead of building it. Yeah. So getting kids involved, what do you see as, I don't know, the future of actually getting kids to see what we do? I love the idea of the tour, and I wish more companies would do factory tours, both just to, their prospective customer, their prospective employees, but to their community in general. Yeah. And I don't know why more companies don't do that. But that's kind of how I mean, like going to Krispy Kreme as a kid, you get to like see the donuts being made. Mm-hmm. Those things were always fascinating, and like I wish that we would show off what we do more. I think when I was in college, I went to a brewery tour, my first like bottling facility, and that really opened the eyes for me when I got an opportunity doing sales engineering in industrial automation. I was able to connect that opportunity to thinking about the bottling plant that I went to, and I was like, oh, I went to that place where they make beer. And they pour a lot of things very fast into a lot of bottles, and then they put labels on them. And I remember seeing that. And so when I was looking at an opportunity that, had to do with sensors in those plants, I like thought back to that experience I had. And I was like, yes, that was really cool. I would like to do that. But I think if I didn't have any kind of representation of what that looked like in my mind, like I probably would have glossed over that. So is that something that you're still kind of pursuing just in different ways, like on the side of your career, or are you kind of integrating it in as you go?
Yeah, kind of both. So two parts to that. One is, as a whole, there's a unique opportunity, right? I would say the number one thing I hear from C-suite is actually that there's a hiring problem. Not that there's a technology or automation problem, right? There's a skill set that is going to be retiring, and we can't fill those positions, and now we're bringing everything on shore. But also, there's a lot of research out there. I think Forbes just released something, or actually, sorry, it was Resume Builder that I was reading, that 4 out of 10 Gen Zers are looking to get back into blue-collar jobs, right? They know that there's more job security, and they also know that AI is taking over things like cold calling, right? You can get an AI to do a lot of things, but to my dad's great foresight, you can't get them to turn a wrench, right? So
anyway, you talk to those humanoid VC investors.
I know, we're not going to scare him too much. I do scare him away from shows on Netflix about robotics. I'm like, it's okay, you're okay.
Yeah.
But there is still some job security there, right? And so capturing that attention is really important. I talk about this so much whenever we do client meetups. I do a lot of on-sites with clients. I do a lot of conferences. That's how I actually met you guys. And a big topic I always bring up when there's a group of people is, how are you attracting talent? And they're like, oh, it's really hard. You know, we're trying to recruit from the local colleges. And I'm like, have all of you done any type of circuit board as kids? Everyone has. Everyone knows how to test a battery and watch a light go on. There's an opportunity there in the 3rd grade to say, show this video of our plant and show the lights going off to trigger something that's pouring out. Here's a video that we made just for you guys in our community of what this plant actually does that their parents work at. And we made it really cool when you do this demonstration. Most kids are learning programming languages the way we used to learn Spanish and French. I know that the kids in our camps, we would start programming languages as early as 6 years old, right? It's simple, but like every kid knows how to do Minecraft. And so there's an opportunity, and while they're in Minecraft, go build a local factory that makes something, and then we're going to take that tour. And so at MaintainX, we did just release educational licenses. So if you have a vocational school or a program, you can actually download licenses for your kids and they can start using our software. But also I'm working with our PR team on doing kind of a how it's made, but like how you got into this career and what's really cool about what you're making while we do like a Lego building set or something, kind of like the Hot Wings take. But really to get people to start telling those stories again. Because when I stand at a table, I'm like, okay, let me predict how you got into this. It's either military, you know someone in your family, or you got recruited from something you were already doing. But because these jobs are opening up, and I think one of the studies I read that now 1/5 of those do require a bachelor's degree, there's an opportunity for us to get engaged earlier. And then last, I'll say that I was at a dinner with really big food manufacturing company. All of them were under 35 years old. There's like 6 of them sitting at the table with me. And I said, go around and tell me why you got into this industry, because I bet it's not the ways I just named. And all of them were like, yeah, no, I thought I was going to be a doctor. I thought I was going to do, food science in some way. And then I went to a career fair and they spoke to me about what they could do for me in my career. They spoke to me about how much opportunity there was, how there's not a ton of people fighting for the same position. So I had a higher opportunity of getting hired and getting good wages. And so those companies took a lot of extra dollars to do outreach programs. And to your point, give that representation and show what they can do and what they can make and what they can be part of. And those companies have higher EBITDA, they have higher retention rates, they have market share that shows that those types of programs work when you recruit earlier. So there's justification in the dollars there too.
Very cool. Yeah, I think it's, as I'm getting older and realizing kind of my strengths and weaknesses, and part of, I think, being an enthusiastic communicator about a solution like we are, is that you have to really be into it. And it helps when you can kind of marry your passions to your career, whether they're full-time part of it or like kind of, side part of the job. So I also am lucky enough that in my new position with WinTech, I work for an HMI manufacturer. It's not exclusively my job or even in my job description, but I am running point on a partnership with Arduino to work on more STEM education content for kids, bringing them industrial PLCs and HMIs, kind of as that next step from, everybody's kind of, looked at it or soldered a board or done a little bit of programming, and maybe they've used an Arduino before, but on a different scale, right? So how do we then take the next steps to go from STEM careers aren't just being a coder for a big tech company, right? They can be all over the country. They can be in every small town that manufactures anything. And they aren't just on, laptops connecting to GitHub, but and maybe they will be in the future, PLC programming and all of that kind of stuff. It is definitely evolving, although slowly. But, there's a lot to be said about the other types of STEM careers, the hidden STEM careers, I guess, in manufacturing.
Yeah.
And I hope that, there's mainstream content coming out a little bit more now. I know the BBC is doing a series with A3 about the impact of like automation. But like kind of what we see in popular culture is usually pretty far removed from the reality of us. So like you said to your dad, kind of just stay away from those things.
Yeah.
They're not necessarily realistic. And then we have the How It's Made, which I think oftentimes that's one of the favorite shows that like I've watched. It's one that many people reference when we say, "How did you get into this?" Some people are like, "Oh, I loved that show." But what I noticed was that show, and I haven't watched it in a while, but it was a lot of traditional manufacturing processes that have been around and they've been doing it the same way for a really long time. Which is also why they're proud to show it off, I think, and they're also not concerned about some competitive advantage that their new automated machine is they're gonna show the IP. Because there's probably nobody that would start a manufacturing business competing with them doing it the same way, that they would show on TV.
Right.
But that's the tough part about balancing, like getting the word out and content, and the customers wanting to keep the competitive advantage of automation and what they're using and all of that kind of stuff to themselves.
Yeah, but I mean, there are opportunities for educators to seek out those things as well. I know that IMTS is a really big conference. They have a whole day for educators to bring their students and talk about what are you making and showcase it that way. I think there's a lot of opportunity at conferences for us to sponsor more educational opportunities. So maybe we're not exposing them to the floor, but again, there's a day where we know we're going to show a video of what it's like to make this, or show them what the end product is and did you know how it's made. And then, of course, the opportunity to go into the schools ourselves. I know that all of you are very passionate about kids' education, this enrichment. And so you're on the ground doing the legwork. It's just really about, okay, I did the legwork. I found this whole pool of children who are lit up by this. What do you want to do with this as the manufacturer? This is in your community. It's in a 40-mile radius. What dollars do you want to invest to keep these kids excited about this as they go through their career? Maybe you fund their Andrino, right? Maybe you fund their 3D printing and they just see your name and you have to print something for the workers for Employee Appreciation Day, right? So keep them connected in the community. It doesn't need to be making a LinkedIn channel. It could just be, what are our everyday efforts to engage this small town and continue to bring, even if you go away to college, you know that you have a better guaranteed job programming the automation and software that we're installing now than you do getting a game design, job in San Francisco. So,
I actually know several video game designers, I know one video game designer that is now an HMI, like he programs PLCs and HMIs, and he likes doing HMI design because it's similar but different to video game design. And he has been wanting to get more of his video game designer friends into it because he's like, well, it's a more stable career. It actually pays well. There's less competition. But you're utilizing a similar skill set, although it's, a little bit different. And it was cool because he was talking about how he wanted to show all of his video game design friends how much harder it is to design like a real industrial environment, because you don't just have unlimited amount of space. You have to fit things into the control room, and there's all these constraints. And I think that, we could probably attract a lot of adjacent skills into our profession, or a lot more if we did more of that. Yeah. So cool. I want to get back into MaintainX. So as a fellow enthusiastic person, I bet I could get you to go off for the next 60 minutes. But can you give me what gets you so excited? What gets you out of bed about MaintainX? And what are some of the coolest things that you've been able to do or seen your customers do with your product, or what it is that you sell?
I think the most exciting part of my job is making grumpy Pauls, which is what I refer to my dad on all my calls.
Okay.
Like that is it, right? Is everyone has the guy on their team who's been there 30 years and is kind of disgruntled about all the changes that are coming with the connected worker. But the fact of the matter is I didn't teach that man how to send me dog memes, and he figured it out just fine, right? He knows how to use talk to text. So he can act like the world's moving too fast and we're losing skills, but you gain skills too, especially after the pandemic when we had to go more remote. Now, the factory never shut down, but there were a lot of things they had to put in place that he had to adapt and adopt or else, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so it lights me up whenever I get those disgruntled people on the call and they're like, yeah, okay, corporate's trying to sell us something again. And then partnering with them to tell their story. I don't think there's enough storytelling in manufacturing. It's kind of always just been you either need, these sensors or you don't. You either need this software or you don't, and we just keep things running. It's all about keeping things running. And I agree, but there's a story in the people who keep it running. And I do see that there's levels removed from the boots on the ground that
Yeah.
don't get that story regularly. And so a big part of what I've done here is I insist on doing that's the wind. Sorry about that. I insist on doing that boots on the ground interview. I insist on going out and saying, show me your world. Show me every time it's painful and where you think they don't understand. And let's paint that bigger picture. Let's tell that story. And then I either equip them with what they need to tell that story or what I need to get higher up to help them understand that pain, right? And I think everyone is capable of being salespeople. Sales is not car salesmen, right? It's the ability to meet people where they are, to have the resilience to keep going. If you know there's a pain there, keep going. I've had to coach so many clients on, no, you're right. You're right. This is actually costing you 40 hours a week in just manual typing. No one got into maintenance to type, right? And then creating that clarity around what's happening on the shop floor and building that bigger picture. There's a lot of talk around AI. We have our own AI capabilities, but everything starts with good data in, and the good data in is still controlled by the people. It's not all just machine. There's a human-centric condition-based monitoring that's happening, and we need to bring the people back into the conversation. So that's what really lights me up is helping them paint the narrative of a sales arc.
That's really cool. So they basically become the champions to solve their own problems with your support or your help.
Yeah.
What would be that
Crazy wind. I don't know what's happening here, but okay.
Yeah. Hey, Lisa shut. I was gonna say I will give you some time to go close the door.
Thank you. No, it's
Take care of
fine.
yourself. What would be if people don't know anything about MaintainX? Can you give us a little elevator pitch about what the product is and what it does for people?
Yeah, so we're enterprise asset management, computer maintenance management software. But we were started as mobile first. One of our founders likes to say, there was already 300 CMMSs out there and we were 301, but why? And it's because we were solving the one challenge that none of them had actually achieved yet, and that was being friendly enough for the end user. Being something that even if Paul's grunting and groaning about, I didn't teach Paul how to use MaintainX, but I can hand him my phone and he can create a work order. He can see all of the meter readings. He can watch his assets from our dinner table and feel connected to what his people are doing and really create a more tech forward maintenance frontline by just making it more mobile friendly and more tech friendly. So that's baseline what we do.
Okay, so taking something that's been around for a while, there's plenty of players, probably very big companies with very, kind of top-down approaches. And then you've taken and really thought about it from like the operator first perspective.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think Paul had a really good point whenever I told him I was coming to work here. No, CMMSs are for corporate. It's a bunch of fancy dashboards. But half of those dashboards are made up from Paul coming in on a Friday and punching in everything he could remember he did that week because he doesn't have time to figure out this software, right?
Yeah.
So by him using it every single day, because it is really user-friendly, because it's something that's well adopted, those dashboards actually start to mean something. And now we can move into predictive maintenance. Now we can move into more automation. Now we can have the machines teach us more about what they need to increase that asset health.
Okay, so it really brings their perspective kind of into the data. Because I feel like a lot of systems like this, they tend to pull data, right, from devices,
Yep.
but they lack context. And
Correct.
a lot of maintenance people do a lot of things that maybe aren't exactly how you would do it by the manual, but like you said, it's all about keeping the plant running. So
Yeah.
depending on what time of day it is, whether, it's a tight shift, like they will do things that I don't know, they never make it to the dashboard, right? And so sometimes it papers over a lot of problems that don't make it to that end decision maker because guess what? Everybody kept things running.
Yep.
but then that doesn't always mean that the best information makes it to the top. So do
Right.
people, I guess, as the maintenance people are using the system, that their knowledge kind of comes along with it, I guess, in a way? Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, that's definitely one of the biggest value drivers for us is the ability to transfer that tribal knowledge on their way out, right? So it's not just capturing the check mark of a lockout tagout. It's okay, this machine of 100 years went down. My dad fabricated some part for it. He has a million videos of fabricated parts in his phone. And when he retires in 2 years, that phone is worth a whole salary, right? Especially as we try to level up new techs. So him being able to capture that fabrication in there, for him to
Yeah.
create a part within the workroom of that fabrication, for him to record a video of how he did it, he can retire comfortably, teach his apprentice that, and that tribal knowledge is passed down in a digital way that can then be shared up and standardized across the business or across multiple factories. And that's the other part that our clients find a lot of value in is not only are we capturing what's happening on the day to day, but we're able to share that knowledge. We're able to standardize it, which is, of course, big in manufacturing, and operationalize it, right? We want to continue to work in that direction. Let's repeat that, or let's modify it and then pass that modification back down to the site level and train them on it quickly. And that's where kind of our AI tools come into play as well, is having a new tech be able to say, hey, how do I troubleshoot this? And it can pull from manuals and past work orders and show step by step and even create a new procedure for them based on whatever it has been operationalized across the business.
Very cool. Yeah, I think this we have to, obviously, and the technology is there to help us create these systems that are not just general knowledge, but like your own knowledge. Um, and there's the corporate data that exists, which yes is very helpful in the data sheets and all those sorts of things. But then you have so and so's way of doing it that's always worked,
Yep.
and that's the part that is so missing from any one of these systems. So that's really cool that that's kind of baked into how your system works. What are some of the biggest, or I guess, how do you see the implementations of your systems affecting the bottom lines of your customers? Do they have, because you read a lot of their corporate earnings reports and things like that, right?
Yeah.
What's the correlation between having this cultural mindset and the systems to support that?
Yeah.
And actual like better earnings? Or is this something that we just need to invest in for the future because otherwise we won't stay in business or be competitive?
No, absolutely no one buys anything because I say you should buy this or else your future is dim. That is just not, especially in manufacturing. They don't care. I mean, except for a few, like 5%, as long as they can keep doing what they've been doing, they will. Like, you
Yeah,
got to paint
right?
a bigger picture than that, right? So where we impact really what your financial earning report's looking at, we impact asset utilization. So the more you can utilize that asset, because we've been able to keep our PMs on schedule, we've been able to troubleshoot faster, whether that be through our sensors integration, whether that be through our different predictive maintenance tools, or just straight utilization, right? We know how much our labor is being utilized and how much more we need to hire, right? We're able to predict that better. That helps us keep down or reduce the cost of goods, right? So they care about that. The more we can utilize those assets, the cheaper it's going to be for us to produce. Great, we're making stocks happy. Parts inventory optimization. So are we using the right parts, and are we using it before it causes a bigger problem? One of the things I love to do whenever I'm talking to the floor level is tell me a nightmare story. Everyone has a nightmare story.
Yeah.
Where they're like, we should have changed the filter, we didn't, then we had to overnight some part for $40,000 and it was just a filter, right? So better utilizing what you have on hand and being able to predict what you need to purchase is a huge win, and it's an easy win for most of our clients. And then, of course, maintenance program optimization. And all that really means is, are we utilizing our labor correctly? Are we shifting away from just a calendar-based maintenance program? So we got 8 guys on shift because that's what we've always done, to more automated and timely maintenance, whether that be condition-based or other. And really keeping them on top of their operating costs. The more we can keep those down and predict out what they need to spend, then we're impacting their overall cash flow, their free cash flow, right? So that's the bigger picture I can paint. 9 times out of 10, whatever they're using has always just been good enough. And those are easy dots for us to connect at the C-suite. But doing it with, some fun photos of your maintenance team just banging their head against a wall and carrying a heavy binder around with them, that also helps.
That's crazy. Yeah, stories. That's true.
Yeah.
People do have like they will go off on their most extreme stories. I just thought of while you were talking about that, I sat next to somebody on a plane about 2 years ago that was flying back with a seal for a valve from, I don't remember where we were, Chicago or Vegas, somewhere. I was flying back to Houston. And they were like, yep, this line's been down for 2 days and we couldn't get a replacement. And they were like, we found this used seal that's for a different size valve, but it's bigger, so we can cut it. And this was cheaper. It was cheaper to buy a plane ticket, come pick it up, and like fly back with it home than to overnight. Or, they couldn't even, I guess they could have overnighted it, but the amount of money it was costing them to be down, it was just, so the lady was just like, here I am, a courier, basically a glorified courier picking up this seal
Yeah.
because it's costing us so much money for this valve to be down.
Yep. You hear that all the time.
That is something I see quite a bit. It's like a company will have all these budgets and they want to cut costs in a lot of places and they want to be super efficient, and then one event like that will basically just wipe out the entire budget or savings that they might have had from doing things more efficiently.
Right. Or one safety occurrence, right? If something happens safety wise, the company has to pay big bucks for that, and it could have been prevented if you just had step-by-step procedures that were very visible. Did you do this? Sign off that you did that safely, right?
Checklists are really important. I think I saw this was like a while back, but it might have been on Oprah or something, but it was like revolutionary that this like surgeon was saying that like even people that are that advanced in their career like should have a checklist. Just because you should know doesn't mean you don't miss something sometimes. And like in especially these situations where, life and death or operating something that, like an airplane, right? It's like, I don't know why we don't have checklists for more things in life. We just assume that we kind of should know what we should do. And it's true, we should. And we do most of the time. But people, we make errors all the time.
I mean, that's just it, is the more we utilize technology, the more we reduce human error. There's still opportunity for you to do something dumb, but we're trying to reduce that margin of error as much as possible by utilizing technology. Yeah, I don't know how people live without checklists personally. Like, the amount of checklists I have all over my house is ridiculous.
Yeah, I probably need more. I have this ADHD thing where if I'm very interested, I will be super detail oriented. But if I'm not, then, minor details tend to kind of fly by me in a lot of cases. Like, I was recently submitting reports to someone on a bi-weekly basis, and I was counting back from 14 days. It took me several weeks to realize that it should have been 10 days because it's business days. But I kept, saying out of 14 days out of the 2 weeks. And then they're like, yeah, we don't need to be including weekends in this. And I was like, oh, I wasn't. I was just totally thinking 2 weeks and wrong 2 weeks. Yep. Minor detail, but also can be very, very major depending on what systems we're relying on that data coming from me.
Yep.
Right?
Yep. I have my ADHD. If you want to know everything about royal queens, I can tell you everything for the last 2 weeks that I've been reading. But if you need to know about my expense report, I'll get to it. I don't know.
Yeah.
In there. I don't care.
So. Yeah, I probably should have been doing those for a while now.
Yeah.
That's funny. So what are some of the coolest jobs that you've gotten to interact with? Since I'm sure you go to a lot of different types of factories. And they don't, a lot of factories have similar job titles, types of roles. But then I found when I was out in the field and getting to see all kinds of different things being made, there's all kinds of cool stuff out there that we haven't seen before. I've been in a glass bottle factory. I thought that was pretty cool. But what are some of the coolest jobs that you didn't know about until I got into MaintainX and got to meet some people?
Jobs, I love IT/OT teams. Like those,
Okay.
I love talking to them. And I don't think that was a real focus as far as titles go whenever I
No.
first started here. I've been here now a year and a half. And for me, and there's one of my colleagues who got me into the Industry 4.0 mastermind. He's like, you geek out. You're going to like this. Sit here, watch this video. And I was like, I'm in. And I really, again, going back to watching the kids program and seeing the machines talk to each other and sensors. I love the sensors and automations and, how does this all connect to the UNS and what does that data stream mean is really exciting to me. As far as cool things being made, I work with a lot of motor manufacturing, some big ones. And so recently toured one of the racing facilities. And when I tell you, whenever I geek out, it's embarrassing. My face is embarrassing. But I was just like, can we go again? Like you get to see them testing the engines and trying to break it. I toured a construction site for a major bridge or major freeway that's being built. I've been there multiple times now, and it's just so immaculate. But like even the way they wash these massive machines and what they do to clean the water and be more green is really forward thinking. But the people that I met that are leading those innovations are usually the ones who call me and they're like, hey, we're doing this really backwards thing here. Can you come just clean up what we're doing for maintenance? Like it doesn't make sense that we're utilizing technology to clean water and then printing a binder that's 85 pages, right?
Yeah.
And then I just recently toured a wire making company, wire and cable, and this particular facility was making very special wire for the government, and it was like glass and it was so cool, and like you could tie it and break the glass, but if you touched it, it would like pierce your skin. And I was like,
Oh, wow.
it's just, yeah, it's little geeky things that I can't actually think of a single facility I've toured where I wasn't like, show me again.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
let's walk the line. Let's show me how it's coded. Show me where the robot moves things. I mean, that's why I love conferences too, is just watching all the robots, all the different processes in like a really condensed space. You can't get me out of there. It's hard.
No, it's hard. I tried leaving, or not tried, but I left kind of the manufacturing industry for a while, and part of what like kept me wanting to come back was just there is something very cool about physical things being made and starting to gain that understanding of how things work that we use every day and how they're made and like what goes into that, the processes, the people, the materials. I got really geeky about material science for a while because I used to work in simulation. So I've never seen a jet engine being manufactured. I've seen one being reconditioned,
Yeah.
and I have seen them be simulated a lot. And at IMTS last year, I got to drive a NASCAR simulator with Hendrix Motorsports and Hexagon Manufacturing Intelligence, and I'm gonna get to do that again in, what is it, like 2-3 weeks now? Hexagon Live, they have a big conference in Vegas, and they have a motorsports manufacturer that, and I didn't know this either, like the companies that make cars, they manufacture other things as well, some of them, right? So like
They very much do. Yeah.
and so again, like people know like a consumer name, Rolls-Royce, they make cars, well, they make jet engines and all kinds of other things too. And I also think, yeah, it's just super fascinating, and it's hard to keep a lid on the learning. And I think just again, some of us like we just feed off of the new things we get to learn, and it like as those sparks kind of connect dots in our minds, it's like really hard to keep that excitement under wraps. So working in the manufacturing industry, not necessarily as a plant maintenance engineer or like, if you're in the plant, you're kind of in that same environment every day. That's a different type of position. Although it can be great for some people, like you got predictable hours or you don't have to travel. But for somebody like me, I'm like being in a place where I get to go from one plant to the next and learn something that then I can transfer and I can say to that person like, hey, I saw this somewhere else. This could be useful to you, right? Those are, I guess we're like little bees, like pollinating little ideas here and there.
I love that analogy. Absolutely. That is. I think that's why it's important, like your podcast, there's a lot of podcasts out there that I subscribe to in the manufacturing space. why they're so important is because you think no one cares about this, little thing, right? There's
Yeah.
CMMS radio, right? He just talks about CMMSs. It's such a very niche thing, but we do care. And it is cool and it is good for communities to share ideas. I also think that's where it's a lot different than the world. My dad grew up, my grandfather retired from the same factory. That's where they met my mom's. My aunt retired from there. And they just only knew that insular kind of community within the factory. But now I send him podcasts all the time. I'm like, listen to this on your drive home. Like, this is really cool. This automation, this PLC, like, this is something you should take that idea and go be excited about bringing new ideas. There are a lot of manufacturers that build it into their culture to everyone is a problem solver here. Everyone should be bringing problems to us about and ways to solve that, right? And so I think there's an opportunity there with communities like yours and your podcast to pollinate ideas and help them grow, connect them to resources. There's plenty of times where I've worked on a deal or made a connection with another vendor and I'm like, hey, they need you, come over here. I have no use out of the connection besides I just think you do something good that could help them.
Yeah.
And that also gives you a sense of purpose in this community too.
Absolutely. And I love the cross-pollination, not just in, across shows, communities. So you mentioned the Industry 4.0 mastermind a couple times. That they're a whole community that's very focused on digital transformation in OT, IT, and they've got like really great material. I've heard over the years some people are like, oh, aren't they your competition? And I'm like, what? Competition for what, first of all? And secondly, absolutely not, because we have our thing that we discuss from our lens and our curiosities and our shared histories and, the way that I ask my questions based on, oh, that made me think of like something that I've done, right? And I think some people, and I used to be guilty of this before I started this podcast. I had an interest to start a podcast in another space that I was in, but I just thought, well, there's already podcasts. Like, what could I possibly add that isn't already being discussed? And somebody just told me that recently too. They're like, oh yeah, I would love to start a podcast, but I don't know what I would, everybody's already doing it. And it's like, yeah, and everybody is still starting new ones. And honestly, even if you had the exact same title and you talked about the exact same topics with the exact same guests, unless you really just have no point of view at all, you're going to have a totally different conversation about the same thing. I mean, and so I love spreading kind of like, I haven't been able to sit through the mastermind class because it's not enough of a priority for me for it to make sense for me to spend my time there. But I love being part of that community. I try to like pop in when I can, kind of a thing, because we do discuss things from a very different like angle and layer. So I would encourage anybody that is interested in learning more about the UNS. So that means UNS stands for Unified Namespace. It is kind of not a new take in any way on digital transformation, but it is an idea that's, I guess, taking more hold, and there is a whole lot to be learned there. Industry 4.0 solutions in their community is one great place to learn about that. We also have a member of kind of our community with OT Skatacon named Alex Marcy, who's written a book on the topic as well, and he's very willing to share his take on it, his experiences. And yeah, I would encourage anybody, whether you're starting the 301st predictive maintenance, company, or the thousandth podcast about X topic, if you feel like you have something to say, then just say it, because it'll probably be different, or there will be some unique angle to it that even if you don't know what it is, it doesn't matter. Like, it's going to be unique to you. Right. And especially if you've surveyed what's out there and you haven't felt like whatever is there is meeting the little vacuum that you feel, the reason that you might want to say something, then there's got to be other people out there that feel that same little vacuum as you, and they may be inspired by what you offer. Just like MaintainX, they didn't have to be the first on the market to offer, predictive maintenance solutions, right? There's something that is better or a better fit or whatever that may be for your customers. So yeah, I'll get off my little high horse about that, but honestly, like you said, going around on these different shows and stuff too, I bet you have very different conversations with all the different hosts, even though the subject matter is kind of similar.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And again, we welcome that discourse. We encourage that discourse. Like even talking about CMMS radio, we're not the only CMMS he's ever featured. There's so
Yeah.
many out there, your own sponsors. Like there's a lot of us. And do your research and feel excited about what you're engaging with. I think that's the most important thing right now in this digital transformation age, generationally, however we want to approach it, is there's an opportunity for you to engage and have your own POV, point of view. I'm using sales terms, your own point of view of why you want to engage with that vendor, with that avenue, with that aspect of Industry 4.0 or digital transformation, and get passionate about it. Go seek out the resources, seek out the vendors, the podcasts, the news articles, stay engaged with the community, follow all of us, follow anyone who has an opinion. I love reading the comments in Discord behind anyone's posts on AI is my favorite. I just eat popcorn and read all the comments on anything AI in manufacturing. But that's how you educate yourself and become passionate yourself. Like you may not be like the two of us. You may just be like a passerby, but I bet something will spark your interest and at least you're engaging in the conversation and not just being a grumpy Paul who does engage now, but like, don't be a grumpy Paul.
Yeah, I think a big part of the future now too is kind of like, are you just going to be a consumer of information? Because there's unlimited information being pumped out and content, especially now with AI, giving you shortcuts. Everybody can be a content creator. There's a double-edged sword to that. Everyone can, and I think everyone, to the extent that they want to, should. Real people. But then also we're getting just bot-generated content, right? So you will either kind of be a consumer of content, or you can be a creator, or maybe even I would say more of like a participator. Like if you take an active interest in what you're consuming and you become a part of the conversation at least, then I think that that's more of a mental exercise and you curate more things that matter to you by being part of it than just passively consuming. Because then the algorithms will just kind of decide like what buttons they can push to get you to do whatever more behavior they're trying to encourage. I think the wild factor of human interaction is something that AI is not going to be able to figure out just yet either.
Yeah, you still have a choice. Remember that. Flex your choice of what you engage with while you still have a chance. So,
absolutely.
Different conversation, different day.
Yeah, for sure. Back to MaintainX, do you guys do the hardware as well? Or do you just connect your different sensors from other manufacturers to your system?
Yeah, we do have a sensor marketplace that you can engage with. You do have to be a user of MaintainX to purchase the sensors, but we do have a wide variety of sensors that you can incorporate into the fuller business plan.
Okay, and are those all manufactured by you guys, or you said marketplace? So are there partner
we
companies?
do have partnerships, correct? Yeah.
Very cool. I feel like ecosystems are kind of the not the next big thing, but they are also coming into, as there's so many different solutions for every single thing, having a strong partner ecosystem seems to me to be a competitive advantage for companies that they're not going at it alone completely, but they're also creating a little bit of a moat, I guess, with having good solutions, good partnerships with companies that you don't have to be everything to everyone, but you can kind of be that referral source or make sure that customers know that something's going to work well with your system, that sort of thing.
I do think as we look at digital transformation, the agility is going to matter. We know we need to do it. We know we need to engage. How quickly can we engage and see a return is important. And we've seen the all-encompassing solutions with ERPs trying to be everything to everyone. It's very long. It's very cumbersome. Someone has to learn just that, like they learn a language and then heaven forbid they win the lottery, then who has to engage with it? And so I think there's more of an adoption around the idea of an ecosystem where you can plug and play and unplug whenever it's not working for you, but you need to have the agility to do that and do so in a way that is profitable for the business. And so that is, again, talking about what I was saying earlier, the ability to call on another vendor and say, hey, like we do this, we want you to come do this, and we want to play nicely together and do that quickly. We're able to attract a lot of partnerships in that way, and do so the quickest that anyone does. So we're very proud of that.
CMMS, what does that stand for?
Computer Maintenance Management System.
Computer Maintenance Management System. Okay. I should have
I'm
known
checking
that.
my own brain now, but that's right.
Yeah,
I was
so
like, I said that very confidently.
it's like a category of software, a well-established category that there are a lot of players, and even a radio station dedicated to it,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
a podcast
Yeah.
show. So very like ERPs, like MES systems, like a
Mm-hmm.
very established category.
EAMs, yeah.
Uh,
Mm-hmm.
but it to me brings this notion of like bloated old enterprise, long rollouts, huge investments, might take so long to roll out that by the time it's actually rolled out, it doesn't do the thing that you wanted it to do, or nobody actually wants to use it, right? That those are sort of the mental pictures that I conjure up when I bring up any of those acronyms. Yeah, I would say it's been 15-ish years since I started hearing the ERP like digitalization horror stories, and they like did not get better in the last 10 years. So what sort of rollout, what does a typical process look like for a MaintainX customer to be able to get up and running and get some ROI out of something like this?
Yeah, absolutely. So we say that a single site we can have up and running in 3 weeks.
Okay.
And we can do full multi-site 200 plus plans in 9 months. So it's really up to the client and how quickly they have someone who's going to be a partner with us. We don't require IT or even anyone in those roles to own it. We need someone at the local level to really help us figure out where the data set's coming from, if we're migrating it from a legacy system or if you're coming off pen and paper, which I would say is a lot of them. And then setting up what the scheduling would look like. We can move as fast as our clients, but a lot of times the bottleneck is your job is not to set up a software, it is to turn the wrenches. And so, yeah, 3 weeks.
Wow. That's pretty cool. And I know that these sorts of things kind of pay for themselves, or they should, as soon as they're pretty much up and running, or within a few months. I mean, it depends, but I'm sure people see like a big bump of things kind of in the first few months, right? As you get things like immediate insight that you didn't have. You might get some stuff tuned that you just had no idea was completely, behind. Or do you kind of get like an immediate bump in ROI, and then it kind of, tapers off? Maybe you've made some initial adjustments and then you just kind of go up from there, or does that make any sense?
Yeah, it does. It does. Adoption matters. Adoption matters across the board, no matter what your tech stack is that you're implementing, right?
Yeah.
You're only as good as people actually using it and vouching for it. So I always encourage our clients to actually go look at the App Store, and we have over 5,000 reviews of like 4.9 stars, and those are from the end users. Those are from the people on the ground using it. But also we're the only CMMS with an adoption dashboard that we can share with our clients. Hey, you have 98 people in here and 97 have signed in the last 8 hours to get their work done. So we're really proud, and we invest our dollars in that. So as much as and as agile as our engineering team is really meeting what our clients need, we also have an equally large customer support team. We have 24-hour support. You can always text in, call in. We also have client success managers that are constantly staying on top of both the adoption and then the metrics you say that matter. That could be, we want to see a reduce in parts. We want to see our PM on-time scheduling go up. We want to see labor utilization on the back end. And so we've built a variety of dashboards that feed into those metrics that you say you care about, or that you can always tap into and see yourself. And a big part of what I always say in the sales process is I don't just hand you off once you buy MaintainX. I know that's very common, but I'm not in the job of selling snake oil. That's why I hated car salesmen, right? It's my job to make sure that I promised you something and we could deliver on it. And so we as an enterprise team hold all teams accountable. Like, hey, these are the successes we've seen with your one site in 3 months. Do you want to replicate this? This is success we've seen across this entire business unit. Do we want to copy and paste that into a different division? And so we're really invested in that long-term support. And that's why we have 2x our year-over-year commitment from clients as well, is because they really want to stay with us and then grow their book of business with us.
Yeah, that's perfect. So again, you can kind of start with a single site, or maybe a single division, and then kind of prove it out and then grow from there.
Yep.
I love that
Yeah.
approach because then
Yeah.
you can, yeah, you prove it internally and you prove that the people actually want to use it, which is probably one of the biggest determinations of whether it's going to be successful or not.
I mean, it's still manufacturing at the end of the day. Like everyone had it pounded into their head, lean manufacturing, lean Six Sigma. Like we know how to test and retest and whatever. So they're going to buy that way. We're going to match our clients in the way that they want to buy. But I will say at the enterprise level, with the way that the world is rapidly changing with the need for AI, it's very much becoming apparent that the end user, Grumpy Paul, if he's not using it, you don't get good data in. You cannot get to predictive maintenance. There's so many rungs to actually getting to predictive maintenance, true predictive maintenance, that if you don't actually know the full picture from the day to day, and that starts with that mechanic and the person who owns that asset health, then you're never going to get there. And that's where we really see the volume increasing at the enterprise levels. We want to just hurry up and get to industry 4.0. We want to get to, the smart factory, and we need to skip some steps. And that starts with us getting the best data integrity out there. And that starts with MaintainX.
Absolutely. Okay, cool. So if people want to learn more about MaintainX, maybe see a demo of the software, what avenues are available to them and what kind of potential next steps are there, depending on if, let's say, if you work at a manufacturer and you think that this would be something that you could use, or I guess separately, what kind of partnership or ecosystem opportunities are there for anyone else if somebody doesn't work at a plant but they're listening to this, they're in the control space, they work at an integrator, what should they know about MaintainX, and then are there any opportunities to interact with you if they find what you're offering to be interesting, or maybe their clients could use it?
Yeah, absolutely. A few questions in there. So
yeah, I know.
it's okay. Sales, I'm used to hearing 15 questions and trying to answer them in order.
Yeah.
So one is, if you want to interact with MaintainX, you can always download the app for free in the app or Google Play Store and just start playing with it yourself. And then we will reach out and say, do you want a bigger demo?
Cool.
You can go online to our website, maintainx.com, or getmaintainx.com, either will work, and you will be able to book a demo live there. Of course, you can always ask me on LinkedIn. I'd be happy to point you in the right direction or give you a mini demo myself. If you were interested in partnering with us and being a PLC or otherwise, we do have a ton of partners. You can actually go to our website, and there's links in there of what our marketplace looks like, who we play well with, and who we'd love to play with in the future. And so you can interact and engage with us in that way. There's an order form there, or again, find me and I'll point you in the right direction. And then we do release a lot of content. So we have our own Wrench Factor where we interview people in this space doing really interesting things. So I always encourage people just to register for our blog and our community and just get those newsletters. We host really awesome webinars that are oftentimes led by the questions coming from our customers and show them how to do really unique things, and then story share of how customers are really adapting our product to what they do. And then we do offer client meetups as well in the communities across the country. So there's a lot of ways that you can engage with us, or at least stay engaged in the community and learn what others are doing.
Very cool. I think sometimes hearing it from other users or existing customers can ring a lot more true or feel authentic, because obviously every marketer and we're gonna say our thing is the best, but then when people really tell you that why they think it's the best, or why they think it's good or good enough to invest in, or that's something that they would choose, those words tend to carry more weight these days, I think.
Social proof is where it's at. Yeah, I always
I still go to, occasionally now I ask ChatGPT, like, what do you think is the best for something? And I'm still at that stage where I'm like curious, but I wouldn't believe a single thing that it does say.
Ask for sources, yeah. No, I always like to say, of course, do your own research. I send all the links to third-party review sites to our clients. Yeah. But I mean, the biggest flex is, even at conferences, I'll pass them my phone and be like, here's the app. You've never seen it before. I'm not going to tell you how to do anything. Poke around. And just like, Paul, they'll poke around, hear some grunts, and then the next day we'll get a call. So it's all about, the proof is in the pudding, and you let the product sell itself. So, and the people's love for it. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for your time, Brit. It was really great to get to know you. I hope that you stay in our industry for a very long time. We're glad you're here. And I love, the more people that are just passionately interested in this type of stuff, the better, and it's also such a great representation, and I think an attraction factor to the next generation to see people like us in this industry. You
Absolutely.
could probably be successful in any industry that you want, but you're choosing to apply your gifts here, and I think that says something about the manufacturing industry.
Yeah.
And same thing, I appreciate you being on our show. That really it makes me feel very nice that you like our content, our way of doing things, and if you're listening to this, we really appreciate you listening as well. And to our fellow creators, shout out to CMMS Radio and Zach Scriven. If you haven't heard him rap about Industry 4.0, you're missing out. Thank you guys for listening.
Yeah.
And Britt, I look forward to seeing you around in the community. We'll have your Britt will have her guest profile on automationladies.io. We'll include some links there, but then feel free to come back and update us on any cool stuff that you guys do, events that you have. Let us know. We'll let our community know, and we'll try to spread the word.
I appreciate it, Nikki. Thank you so much for having me. I love what you guys are doing, and we're just grateful for the opportunity. So you have a great rest of your day.
You too. Bye.
Bye.